But like folks, Paul Anderson here, live for the Howicramar, another workshop, live this time. The last couple I've done, I've had stuff on, so I've had to actually go and recording and then post it, which works fine, because to be honest, I can't see anybody anyway. I can't interact with folk while I'm doing it, so posting it and letting folk watch it at their leisure seems to work absolutely fine. But I think doing it live, there's a bit more appeal to something that's actually happening as you're watching. So we'll see how we get on. Trouble is, if you miss a few weeks, folk are inclined to start forgetting. So this might be very quiet this evening. We'll see how we get on. So I've had a look for some tunes to work on. Now, anybody who noticed the music I posted will ken what they are, but the tunes tonight are going to be my own composition, Farewell to St Kilda, and then a couple of tunes by James Scott Skinner. I was looking for stuff that was maybe a little less well known but still good tunes, and I've gone for Glentana and Dee Castle, a Strathspey and a reel. So if anybody sends in any messages, stuff like that, I'll get back to you at the end. I just can't really do that and speak and play my fiddle at the same time. I'm a typical man, I can only do one thing at one time, so we'll try and get back to Abdi at the end if there is any messages. Okay, so I think let's start with Dee Castle, the reel. Although when I had a go at it there, I've discovered it's a bit more fickery than I realised, but it's no reason not to play it. There's some tricky things that are worth getting to grips with, use of four fingers, barrels, things like that you can, they are at practice. There's no shortcuts playing this sort of stuff. There's crossing strings, quite a lot of crossing strings that makes this particular tune slightly more demanding than some of his pieces. So I'm going to take this very steady for a start, just to let you hear it, and if you want to follow the music, that's fine. By all means, join in if you like. It's in A, so key-wise, it's about as accessible as you could possibly get for playing the fiddle or any other traditional instrument. Bagpipes, well, that's not going to work unless they're a set that's tuned to A. But anyway, let's hear it go. Dee Castle. So nice and steady. To it. Now, as somebody that's played a lot of Skinner's music for a very long time actually, because as a member of the Bankery Strathspey and Reel, and indeed starting with the Junior Strathspey and Reel, you played a lot of James Scott Skinner's music. He came from Bankery, and part of the reason that they were founded and their remit as a fiddle group was to promote his music, Scottish music generally speaking, but it's in a special Skinner's music. So to me that just right away sounds like a Skinner tune. It's got all the hallmarks, it's very much in the style of his reels. See if I play something like... It's not too far from something like... I mean, they sound like Skinner reels, and I mean that could be taken as being a criticism. I didn't think so. I think it's actually quite an appealing thing that you can who's written the tune. It's got just the hallmarks of their compositions. You don't want to be repeating yourself, obviously, but certainly I think hearing something that sounds like it's one of your tunes is no bad thing, and gives you that sense of individuality. I mean, so his music does stand out in a lot of cases as being his, whether it's slow airs or Strathspeys and reels. So this tune is definitely nae well kent though. Dee Castle. I'll speak a wee bit about the place just in a minute. But let's go and play it through a few times now, if you want to join along. Anybody that's looking in or expecting a concert, well, that's nae what this is. This is a workshop, so we're trying to get folk playing the tunes. We'll go through it steady, so it's maybe nae quite as entertaining as just a lot of storytelling and listen to lots of different tunes. But we'll go through them thoroughly and we'll pick it up a bit towards the end before we move on to something else. But I will give you some background on the pieces. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of the reel, taking it very steady, and then I'm going to pick out a few bits and pieces that I think would be worth spending time on, just because they're a bit of fickery kind. Fickery. Letters and answers in a postcard. Tell me what you think fickery means. Okay, 2, 3. Play it again. Try and use plenty of bow. I'm going to take it a bit slower because it is, as I said, fickery kind. Take it a bit slower, but try and use a bit more bow if you're a fiddle player. It all helps to just generate tone and a bit more power. That use of the bow gives you extra volume. Definitely something you want to cultivate rather than having to rely on kind of amplifiers. They're great bits of kit, very useful. It's nice if I hadn't used them myself, but being able to generate lots of tone through your own playing, through the technique that you use, is definitely, it gives you lots more scope, lots more colour to your music. So as far as the fiddle goes, the quicker the bow is moving, the more volume you're going to get. Also, you get a bit more if you press down firmly with your fingers on the string. That pressure helps to tighten the tone up, and that will help as well. So always press down firmly, unless you're going for some kind of effect for it's kind of a bit softer. So let's try it again, twice through, a bit slower this time. 2, 3. Quiet. Just for variety. Louder. Go. A wee bit of louds and softs, dynamics, just adds a bit of colour, a bit more interest. It was just a wee exercise in getting different colours when you're painting with your music. So, a few things about this tune. Dee Castle. Now let's describe what it is. As you would expect, it's on the River Dee. Not quite, but it's very close. It's kind of midway between Ballater and Dinnet. Dinnet, well, if you blink, you're in it and out again. It's not very big. It's I suppose there are a few houses there though, but the most notable thing about that would be the Logie Hotel, I suppose, formerly known as the Prophets. So Dinnet, if you cross the River Dee at the Brig of Dinnet and go up the south side of the Dee, about halfway along, you'll see a farm called Dee Castle. But I have no idea, because I've never been in about to the place, but there was either a big house or a fortified place that was known as Dee Castle. And it was a place that was owned by the Gordon clan, which are fairly well represented in this bit of the world, and indeed to this day the Marks of Huntly, the chief of the Gordons, still bides at a Bine Castle. So let's think, that's about 5 miles away from him sitting. Tarland and Abine, they're about 5 miles away. So still a lot of Gordons in the area. So that's Dee Castle. Anything more about that, well, I think there's much more to say. It's really not that important for this type of tune. It's good to give you some mental kind of imagery to help colour the whole thing, but for a real, not so as important as a slow spare or a slow ear. So let's try it again. Before we do, there's a few things just to watch. Barrels, they're something you need to be careful with. I mean, I can fluff them just the same as anybody else, but always down, up, down. And I tend to play them top half of the bow. Just it's best use of the wrist, really. If you have a problem with your barrels, slow them down. It's just a down, up, down. 2 semi-quavers and a quaver. The last note is the same length as the first two. So it's da-da-da, da-da-da, nay, da-da-da, da-da-da, it's da-da-da, da-da-da. Try and make sure that comes across. And again. Straightforward, the first bit. Relatively speaking, it's straightforward. The tricky stuff comes in the second half. Now, there's a lot of crossing, and I would absolutely, definitely say using 4 fingers, which one of the fiddle players there will probably ken. It's your weakest finger. A lot of the years that I've been teaching that is for the bulk of the tuning problems comes from, because it's a stretch up. And a lot of folk play it fairly flat. It's not even that easy to generate much pressure because it's weak. So the only way you can, how do you build up muscle? Work on it. That's the only way it's going to get better. But most folk will tend to, a lot of folk will tend to steer away from using it if they can. In a lot of keys, A and D, 4 fingers are not really that necessary unless you're going up the neck, or it's a B on the E string. But in this tune, this really helps your bowing. So we'll get the start of the second half. That stops you having to go. There's a point there when you have to completely miss the middle string, go for the A string to the G and back to the A. So using the 4th finger there keeps that really a 2-string crossing rhythm to get from your bottom string to an A, and it makes the bowing an awful lot easier. So I think that's definitely a good thing. Second line, second bar, I use the 4th finger there for the same reason. It makes the bowing a lot easier. So and then it drops back again. It's just a lot quicker. As long as you're confident in that 4th finger, It makes it a lot easier. I would imagine just about every instrument has little things like that, that it makes the process of creating the music easier for the player. In that case, using the fourth is a hurdle for a lot of folk because it's weak and folk don't like to use it and it's uncomfortable. But if you've got it up to something that's a useful tool, it can make a lot of stuff a lot easier. And this particular tune is definitely one of them. And this is quite a tricky passage. Not getting a whiff of that, you've got to go for the G, miss the D string up to the A. So that is tricky. So you just tough. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's tough. You just have to get out of it and practice it. But it will come. But certainly playing with some confidence. Don't be too nervous about it. Practice it slowly. Okay, you get the idea. So let's go back and play the hail thing. I think that covers everything that I would be kind of expecting to see some fickery stuff going on. Untidiness, that's the kind of thing, it's easy to get a bit scrappy in a tune like this. So just try and keep it as tidy as possible, and then once you've got a wee bit of speed built up, try and get a bit of lift to it. There's get to be bits for it. There's a snap to the rhythms. It's here that makes a big difference to the feel of the tune. If you did a hail one of these subtle little snaps to the tune that gives it the lift, it will have very flat, heavy-footed feel to it. But of course, if I tell folk to go and do that, if it usually happens, they overdo it. And that's one of the things that I've found if I've been working with classical players, and it's no criticism of them as players, but certainly it's such a different thing for them to hate to play something not exactly as written in the music. You kind of take things totally literally on the page. When you've got unwritten things like snaps or adding grace notes, which will tend to be just the feel of the player. These are things that takes quite a long time to get a feel for that. So worth bearing in mind. I mean, the trouble is with this tune, because of the movement in it, it's actually difficult to get grace notes into it. But it can be done. It can be done. So if I just go, so right at the beginning, there's a bit of space. With the two A's at the end of that line, that's about the only place I could comfortably play a grace note other than the very first note. So it's just about further space. I mean, the fingers are moving too much otherwise to really allow you to, just the nature of this particular instrument. So let's go back to the beginning. Going to play it 3 times. First twice will be slow, a little quicker maybe, and then we'll get a little bit more pace on the third time. But it is a tricky tune, so I don't want to have the just dropping out. Also, I didn't really want to make an air shot myself. That's the bottom line. Right, let's have a go then. 2, 3. mean, it's a tricky wee thing to play actually. And I'll be absolutely honest, I didn't think I have ever heard it played by anybody. And it will have been played, there's no doubt about that, but it certainly wasn't a tune that was in the Bankery Strathspey reel sets. And if it wasn't for the fact I was recording a Skinner's music, I probably wouldn't have even tried that either. I just wouldn't have bothered looking. But I'm now up to 451 Skinner tunes that I've recorded. They're on YouTube. Quite a few are posted to Facebook as well, but certainly on YouTube. So this book, the Logie Collection, which I've been working through, I have held the book up a few times. Let's just do that just now. So I'll get a bit of a close up here just in a second. So that's the book. Look at that. What a beautiful thing. I mean, that's not a cheap book. That's not a cheap book to have to publish. Right. There we go. There we go. Right. So, Dee Castle, a good tune, I think deserves to be played much more. So try and learn it up and get it out in public. I'm going to go with a Strathspey now. This is called Glentana. And Glentana, or as it's written now, is Glentanar. T-A-N-A-R. Glentanar. But at this time, in Skinner's time, it seems to be called Glentana. And that's, if you go over to Bine, you cross to the south side of the River Dee, and I suppose it's probably about a mile up the road, you get the entrance in to Glentana, and the River Tanner joins the Dee just up before you get to Bine. So it's a beautiful area. Got some of the last remaining remnants of the Caledonian pine forest that once covered, they reckon, 80% of Scotland. I think there's somewhere in the region of 1 to 2% of its original scope still exists. We've actually got quite a bit in Dee side. Places like Glentana, Balloch Buoy, the Coich, Louis Beg, some of that places up the upper reaches of the Dee have still got bits of the original forest. It's very picturesque, and I'll be honest, you feel like you've stepped back in time when you're surrounded with these old granny pines, and it wouldn't surprise you to see a bear or a wolf or something, or a lynx. It's that kind of place. You could imagine it quite easily that if you were trying to avoid the Romans who were on the rampage, you would have seen exactly the same scene. So anyway, I'm getting away off the subject just a little bit, but it's a beautiful area, Glentana. And this is also known as the Logie Collection, and that's how I kent the tune originally for the sets of the Bankery Strathspey Reel Society, and so it was played a lot when we played with them, but it's a tune that you didn't really hear very often, so hence the reason I think it's a great tune, but it's not heard very often, so I think it's quite a good one to get out and about just a little bit more. So Glentana, it can be found in Skinner's Elgin collection as well as the Logie Collection, both of which are difficult to find. But let's say I go with this. Yeah, it's not the easiest Strathspey, I will say that, but it's got a great melody, but it's an A, so it's very accessible. So let's go to the start. Great tune. It's a great tune. So I've written in bowing, which sometimes I stick to, sometimes I don't, but this is a tune that you can play a lot of up-driven bows. We'll have a look at them just in a minute, but let's go through the tune. You don't hate to bow it like I've got it marked, but it works. But you can skin a cut many different ways. And I'm not saying this is the only way to play it, this is just roughly how I would play it. Right, nice and slow and steady. For the top, 2, 3. Glentana, or the Logie Collection. That's how we knew it. Certainly playing with the Bankrester Spray and Reel. They'll still be playing it yet, I would imagine. So, a few things to watch out for. It's trickier because of how I've got it marked with the bone. But otherwise, it's fairly straightforward, actually. But if you're going to put in up-driven bows, you're marking it harder. But actually, you're adding a lot of character, a lot of drive and lift into the music because it's there. But when I just come accidentally, you have to work on it. You have to sort of develop that facility. So if we go right from the beginning, you don't get much of breathing space. You're right into it. Certainly didn't go like this. You're going to be loused altogether. Didn't go too far up with that first lead in. It's a development to the snap. Now I start with the snap. It's a semi-quaver, dotted quaver, semi-quaver at the end. That's the first bit. Get that for a start. Then you add the next one. So you're keeping the pace on that bow, lots of power. It's kind of up-driven bow. So how you play it, it has to deliver that. There's no point in playing it and it doesn't give you extra feeling, because there's really no point in playing some difficult just because you can, unless it actually adds something to the music. It's a complete waste of time. So you add the third up in, and that's for your lift the bow. And that last up is just a tiny little note, and it bites right at the heel. At this point, 3 ups, your last note is right at the heel, and then you return it the next down, straight after it. Yum! You can sort of woof, you can feel it taking off. You can imagine as a dancer that lift that gives to the music. And there's no doubt in my mind that that is entirely why it developed, and I'd imagine it was probably accidental. Let's imagine Neil Gow just mucking about in his fiddle, just trying to get more lift into music. You can sort of see how that might happen, and once that captured the feel there, just bang on, and you start applying it to other tunes. I'm just speculating, of course. And the fact is, Neil Gow is the first person that gets credited with this tremendous power of his upstroke, and he gets credited with the up-driven bow. But he's certainly the first that's mentioned. It may well have been something that was kind of very current at the time that lots of folk used, but nobody else has mentioned. So that's why Neil Gow gets credited with this. And certainly anybody who heard him playing, along with William Marshall as well actually, they said that he heard him playing, the urge to get up and dance was almost unbearable. If you couldn't physically get up and dance, you couldn't keep your feet still. And that says a lot about the style he's playing, that it was just completely infectious. Dance music should be like that, it should make you want to get up and dance. And then even when you are dancing, it should make you dance even better. Anyway, there you go. So, Logie Glentana or Glentana. Things like the sharps here can make it a little bit awkward. The fourth there is really to keep you for hearing a big jump for the E down to the G sharp on the D string. You having to miss the A makes it really a bit clunky, difficult to do smoothly. So let's go back to the beginning and play it through a couple of times. play that ending. Going on to the D string, but that's not if it's written in this music, but that's pretty much how we played it with the Strathspey reel. So anyway, I hope you'll agree, it's a great tune. Logie Collection, or Glentana as it is in that book. Gonna go on and finish now with a slow air. This is a tune called Farewell to St Kilda. It's one of my own tunes. Now, some folk might be put off by the fact that it goes up into the third position. Again, it's a shame that if not being comfy in third position means there's lots of music you wouldn't try. It's just like anything else. If you practice it up, it gets easier. The main thing to watch when you go into third position, going up into it or dropping back, doing it in the first, is making sure that the transition from one position in either direction is as clean and tidy as you can, and that's usually one of the things that trips folk up a little bit. You start getting stuff out of tune and it can be a bit of a scunner. Anyway, let's play a tune first, and I'll play it through pretty much as I play it, which means it's not going to be necessarily exactly the same as the written copy, but it's close enough, and unfortunately it's my own copy, so since this has been published I've sort of developed the tune a little bit more, but you can I feel I can do that since I wrote it myself. So, Farewell to St Kilda, and we'll discuss a bit about the tune and what it's about after, but we'll play it through first anyway. Okay, right. Well, I was quite pleased with that tune. It's funny, I mean, there's no reason why some of your compositions should land out being better than all the others. But I certainly, when I wrote that, I felt like, oh, I think I've come up with something quite reasonable. And I have played that a lot. Not every tune I've written have I felt the urge to play. In fact, I mean, I've written a lot of tunes, and I have to say 50% of them have never been played again once they've been notated. But I did tack to that in quite quick. And I'm sure a lot of the folk that are possibly listening to this will ken about St Kilda. But then again, I'm not going to assume that. St Kilda is, it's a group of islands. I think it's about 43 miles to the west of the Outer Hebrides. They kind of came under the territory of MacLeod and MacLeod at Dunvegan Castle, the factor who would go across once a year and collect the rent went for Dunvegan. But they're miles away from Dunvegan. It's an incredible place. It's a World Heritage Site for two reasons. One is the cultural side, this to do with this incredible story of survival and endurance of the folk that lived there, and also because of the wildlife. It's got some of the world's biggest colonies of seabirds, things like fulmars and gannets and that sort of thing. And also they've got amazing reefs round about the islands as well. So it's a group of islands, the highest sea cliffs in the British Isles, and it is quite a place. It's an incredible place to visit. If you ever get the opportunity, go and see it. I mean, they have limited amounts of folk that are able to go, but I'm kind of fortunate. I've been a couple of times, and the tune was inspired by having been at St Kilda. It really sticks with you as a place, and if you've read up about the history of the place, I'm not going to go into that because we'll be here all night, and there'll be nobody watching in the next 5 minutes. But the folk lived in that amazing extreme place for well over 1,000 years. Exactly how long I'm not sure, but they lived pretty much on fit they produced themselves or fit they could catch. And by that I mean the seabirds. That was a huge part of their life, was catching the birds and collecting eggs off the cliffs. And it was so much so for such a long period of time that proper St Kildans developed feet a bit like your hands, for they could operate them like that, like kind of like, well, I mean, I don't like to say monkeys because they're not like monkeys, but they went barefoot on the cliffs and they could sort of grip on like we can with our hands. And that was a evolutionary thing that developed because of the unique lifestyle that they had. Really living life on the edge. But the people were evacuated off of there, I think it was in 1930. I don't think any of the islanders were ever happy after they left. The government put them to, I think it was Lismore or somewhere like that, but they were put to forestry jobs. Can you imagine? You couldn't have got on anything more different, apart from being doing a mine, of course, but they actually asked to go back, quite a lot of them, and they were refused. So it's quite a sad story, but an amazing story of survival. So the tune itself, although I didn't intellectually think about, if I do this and that, it'll give you this effect. It was totally instinctive, but I was hoping that it'd get a sense of the sea and maybe hearing the birds. That's the one thing when you're going around some of the islands and the stacks. It's like being under a bee's hive. The amount of seabirds that are above your head is quite something. They've got the only wild sheep in the British Isles, I think. They've got soy sheep that are just have been left to their own devices there. So there you go. I'll play it again. With that in mind, read up about it. Get a book about St Kilda. You won't be disappointed. If you want to go clubbing in Ibiza for a holiday, this is not for you. But if you want an amazing cultural experience, an amazing place in the world to go and see, definitely go and visit St Kilda. You won't be disappointed. So anyway, let's see. I'll play it again and play along by all means and see if this creates images in your mind, because certainly when I'm playing this, it absolutely always comes into my mind, some of the sights of St Kilda. Okay. farewell to St Kilda. Ideal place for a lockdown location, I would say. Certainly, you wouldn't see many folk, that's for sure, but it is an amazing place. So, in that particular tune, I mean, there's sections for it goes up pretty high, and without trying to kind of artify it too much, I think it is trying to get a sense of the soaring cliffs there. Some of the grace notes, well, to me, I mean, certainly it should really be reminiscent of seabirds on the air, just you hear them. So some of these grace notes. That little bits, they help kind of add colour to the music. So when you're playing a tune like this, I think it's definitely helpful to have a sense of what the tune is about, or if it's a place, kind of find out about it, look at pictures, read a bit of history, and hopefully it'll kind of fill in it mentally for yourself. Because on a slow air, you really you've got to be convinced of the story yourself, or you can convince your listeners. So yeah, it's never a bad idea to learn about the background to a bit of music like this. So I think just a little bit on the third position, just to watch yourself. So there, that's for you have to kind of watch. So it's a first finger up to a first finger. That's what I play, okay? And I find when my hand moves up, if I sit side on, when my hand moves up, whenever the heel of my hand there touches the body of the fiddle, my fingers ken they're going to be in the right place. It's the same when I bring my hand down, when I feel my thumb and this finger touching like the back of there, and for the strings go across, just across there, I can feel that in my hands. So when my hand comes back, if your hand position's consistent, that gives you a sort of little cue that your finger's in the right place. So up there, one thing to remember is as you go further up the neck, the spaces between the notes, between your first and second, they decrease, they get shorter. So you can't be stretching the same distance as you would in first position when you're up there. So often contracts. So fourth finger, and I bite up for this and cross strings. Saves me hitting the drop down actually. Slight slide there. Scottish fiddling doesn't really have much in the way of sliding in the tradition. I have to say, regardless of whether you come from the Western Isles or the North East or anywhere else, traditionally sliding wasn't something that is used very much, but in slow airs, when you're coming off a third position, folk like Hector McAndrew certainly used it, and but it has to be done subtly, and it's never kind of right in your face. It's just not used like that. Sliding is something you hear much more commonly in Irish fiddling. And certainly, kind of in modern Shetland playing, there's quite a lot of slides and slow airs, sliding onto notes. Some of their kind of notable players do that quite a lot, and I think that I would personally say it was probably the influence of Willie Hunter, probably because he went in for that, and it was a big part of his playing, and it can add a lot of expressiveness, and that's something you certainly want in airs. But certainly when I was being taught to play Scottish music, sliding was never something that was a big part of it. But it's very much down to the player, personal taste. Me, I didn't really go in for it much, but it should really be suggestive of like a sigh. It's just a very subtle thing. Get the idea. So it's the speed of the bow is reduced and the pressure comes off the finger just a bit. So it's never too loud. It's subtly done. Right, I'm going to play it once again, and then that'll be me done the night. Okay, folks, farewell to St Kilda. So, yeah, play along if you like. If no, it's up to you. Me done for the night. So we'll be back on Friday live for the Lounge 32, and Shona and I will be doing it's like a Doric festival night, because it's this time of the year. Every October it used to be the Doric Festival, which was a northeast wide community event really. There was some official events put on, but actually most of the events were done by local communities organising their own thing, and then was compiled into one programme. So we're going to do that. It doesn't happen on Amir, and it wouldn't have been happening this year, but we thought we'd theme it as a Doric festival night. So it'll all be music and song and poetry for the northeast of Scotland in all its glory and splendour. So that could mean tunes by James Scott Skinner, Peter Milton, John Murdoch Henderson, Paul Anderson, could be any of these, and then bothy ballads, narrative ballads, poetry, Ian Middleton, that sort of thing. Who knows? Tune in and find out and see if it's in the box. So there you go. Thanks for looking in the night if you've been there. There's no more folk watching now. I think I've rattled on too long. But if you've enjoyed it and you want to chip into the tip jar, that would be absolutely grand. It's www.paypal.me/. Paul Anderson, Shona Dawn. So we'll see you on Friday if you want to look in, and I will be back next week because we're not going anywhere. There's nowhere open. So there you go. All the best, folks. Have a good night.